The Halo video games are filled with many mysteries. Ancient structures built by an old civilization. A parasite capable of consuming the entire galaxy. A massive Halo ring whose true purpose isn't revealed until the very end of the first game. But somehow one of Halo's strangest mysteries has been sitting directly in front of us in Halo CE, and almost nobody ever talks about it logistically. Imagine experiencing Halo for the very first time. You're stranded on a mysterious ring world. Humanity is struggling to fight these aliens, the Covenant. Every encounter for you with the Covenant feels grounded. Their weapons overheat, their shields deplete. They have standard formations, little ones up front, big ones in back. Every piece of technology feels like it belongs to someone. Then, suddenly, you are exploring and walk over a glowing red object. It vanishes. Your armor somehow absorbs it. You hear a really cool sound effect. Your shields become layers stronger. No animation, no explanation, no reaction. Cortana doesn't tell you what just happened. Marines don't acknowledge it. Covenant troops don't seem interested in protecting it or care that they left it in the open. It's a little out of place. You just walk over it, absorb it, and keep moving. For many years, most people accepted this without giving it much of a second thought. But why? If you stop and think about Halo, the existence of these objects is incredibly strange. Halo spends so much effort making its universe feel mostly believable. The UNSC have identifiable common-style weapons. Covenant technology also has recognizable design language. Vehicles are purple, ammunition is stored in crates or blamite crystals. Marine medical supply crates are found where you expect them to be. Everything seems to obey these gameplay-fused stylistic rules, except the power-ups. Overshields, active camo, and even the campaign's health packs exist in a strange category, all on their own. They're power-ups. They don't function like anything else in the game. They don't behave like weapons. They're just waiting for someone to walk over and absorb them. Though they feel a little familiar because they are. Before Halo, games like Doom, Quake, and even Mario train people to expect glowing power-ups scattered throughout levels. You never really asked why a floating mushroom gave Mario an extra life or made him bigger. You didn't question why Doom's armor bonuses floated in the middle of a hallway. These weren't like realistic world-building objects, they were game mechanics, power-ups. Halo also picked up this idea. But Halo wanted something different. Halo 1, Combat Evolved, wasn't just another game. Bungie built an entire universe around making the player believe this world actually existed in realism, just with aliens, the Covenant, and a good story. Even enemy ranks, vehicles, weapons had a purpose within Covenant society. So it's almost strange that this antiquated tradition of power-ups survived completely untouched, even up to and inside of Halo. You, the player, are expected to simply accept these mysterious glowing objects, because that's just what games did. Provided power-ups. Except Halo wasn't like other games. It was a new groundbreaking universe on the scale of Star Wars. But once you start asking questions and hyper-analyzing the game, these power-ups become much harder to ignore. When I started looking into them, I noticed some interesting quirks with them, particularly in Halo 1. So let's start with the first power-up, active camouflage. This one is actually a little less mysterious the way it appears in the missions. Covenant technology already uses active camouflage. Stealth elites use it in the game, almost always when they're attacking. Spec Ops elites and grunts use it throughout the campaign as well. So by itself, the technology of active camo isn't mysterious at all. And then I noticed one detail I'd somehow overlooked for years, in that the game actually does make sense about where these pickups come from, mostly the locations that they're placed on the campaign. Active camouflage power-ups are frequently found near the bodies of dead stealth elites. Instead of being completely unexplained objects, they start to feel like battlefield remnants. Equipment dropped after combat. The glowing orb isn't necessarily how the technology exists in universe. Elites don't just walk over pyramids to activate invisibility. Instead, the power-up is likely a gameplay representation of something they were carrying. But interestingly, there is at least some attempt at an explanation outside of the game and the lore. As I was doing more research on the lore, I did find an old Bungie article written by Stephen Loftus in 2005, which is a bit after Halo 1 was released. The website this article was on is mostly defunct now, but the article itself still exists. In it, it is explained that active camo units are characterized by a translucent pyramid with an energy spheroid encased within. Physical contact with the spheroid causes the energy to be released around the subject. So, same concept with the overshields as well. So, at least in Bungie's post-canon thinking, the pyramid shape and instant activation weren't completely random. They were justified to represent a contained energy device that activates on contact once you touch or absorb it. But that still leaves questions. Why does it take this exact form? Why does it activate instantly? And how do Spartans integrate this Covenant technology just by touching it? But at least here, there's a visible connection between the power-up and the Covenant forces that use it. If the mystery ended there, we'd actually have a decent explanation of the power-ups. Active camouflage could simply be battlefield equipment left behind by Covenant forces, just represented in a simplified way for gameplay. But there's one other pickup that kind of refuses to fit that explanation, and that's the Overshield. This is where things get a little bit stranger. At first glance, the Overshields feel Covenant, the color palette, the glowing electric orb design. Everything about it resembles Covenant shield technology. But unlike active camo, there's not really a clear in-game link with the placement of overshields in the game. And this is because Covenant troops actually never use overshields in CE. If they do and I missed it, then it's very minuscule usage. So it's not in gameplay. You don't see an elite activate overshields in vanilla gameplay. You don't necessarily find overshields near elite corpses either, like you did the active camo. They aren't really treated like Covenant equipment at all in this game. They're just there, waiting. And when you look closer, the object itself becomes even more unusual. The glowing sphere inside of the cube that represents the overshield isn't some unique Covenant effect. It's actually just the texture of a jackal's energy shield wrapped onto a ball. And that's actually the same with active camo too. That detail makes it feel less like a real piece of Covenant equipment and more like an unfinished asset. If the overshield isn't something Covenant soldiers actually carry in the game, why is it here? What exactly are we picking up if it's not used by Covenant inside of the game? Then we have the health packs. Unlike the Overshield and active camo, these don't really belong in the same category. They aren't Covenant, they're clearly human equipment, but that actually makes them interesting for a completely different reason. Health packs behave exactly how you expect supplies to behave. They're stored in believable locations, inside facilities, near areas occupied by UNSC, places where injured Marines might actually need medical treatment, and packaged as we know medical supplies are, with a red cross. In other words, they make sense, a lot of sense. The Covenant power-ups don't as much with their placements in the game, or the form they take. Health packs reinforce a more realistic world. Overshields and active camo almost seem to exist not in the game's reality. And perhaps the strangest part isn't what these objects are, it's that nobody acknowledges them in the game. Marines never shout, "Chief, Overshield." Cortana never says, "That technology should enhance your defenses." The Covenant never attempt to secure them, protect them, pick them up. Johnson, Guilty Spark, never comments on them. They're physically present inside the campaign, but yet they exist in silence. And that silence makes them feel even stranger. Now, here's where things become really interesting. These power-ups don't just appear randomly. Many of them are positioned exactly where the player is likely to need them. Before difficult encounters, near major combat areas, at critical points throughout the campaign. From a gameplay perspective, they make sense. Bungie wanted the players to have a fighting chance. But from an in-universe perspective, who placed them there? If active camouflage is tied to fallen stealth elites, then some placements make sense as remnants of battle, but overshields don't follow that logic as much. They aren't tied to Covenant units, other than those 2 you find on the boarding crafts in the first mission. They aren't guarded, they're simply placed in locations that benefit the player, which makes them feel less like abandoned equipment and more like something deliberately positioned for gameplay value. But the game never really tells us. At this point, I figured maybe the rest of the games in the series would finally explain it, but instead, Halo 2 makes things even stranger. In Halo 2, power-ups don't appear in the campaign at all. It's almost like they were intentionally removed, possibly for the exact reasons we've been talking about. They do show up occasionally in multiplayer, but never in the story. You do get to play as the Arbiter in Halo 2, which gives a clearer, more grounded look at how active camo works for elites. Far more practical than walking over a glowing pyramid. Later games continue this shift. Halo 3 introduces equipment, deployable physical devices like bubble shields and cloaking units. And Halo Reach leans further into this idea. Over time, the series moves away from abstract power-ups and more toward believable physical equipment. Looking back, Combat Evolved feels like a transitional moment in gaming history. Part classic arcade shooter with the glowing power-ups, and part grounded science fiction universe with believable world building. And these two philosophies overlap in fascinating ways. Nowhere is that overlap more obvious than these forgotten objects scattered across early Halo. So, after looking at every clue, the Covenant connection, the placement, the complete silence from every character, we're left with 2 explanations. One is simple, the other is more interesting. But maybe the simplest explanation is also the correct one. Halo inherited a mechanic from games like Doom, Quake, and Mario. Pick up power-ups. And Bungie never felt the need to really explain it inside of the game. Players understood glowing gameplay pickups to help them progress the game. However, Bungie did offer at least a minimal in-universe explanation that I showed, describing the active Camo and Overshield units as translucent pyramids or cubes with the energy spheroid inside, where physical contact with the spheroid releases the energy around the subject who touches it, granting them active Camo or Overshields. But after more than 20 years, we still don't know, from what I found, how these Covenant power-ups materialize in the battlefield in these random locations. Why Master Chief can just walk over them, absorb them, and continue the mission as though nothing just happened. Maybe it's simply a gameplay mechanic carried over from an older era of games. Or maybe it's one of Halo 1's oldest mysteries, hidden in plain sight, quietly waiting for someone to finally ask the question, why were the power-ups there in the first place?